I bought a Z7. No, I didn't. It was a Z8. I bought a Z8 from a friend. And I don't know if you've seen the previous video about it came up because he was unloading his Nikon system going to Sony, I think. Anyway, and he sold it to me for what he was going to be paid for it as a trade-in at the camera store. And kid in a candy shop. It's a beautiful camera. It really is. It's a major upgrade from the D500. Although, as I said before many times, D500, one of my favorite cameras. But there are a few shortcomings to this camera, and I'm going to complain about them. So if you don't want to hear me gripe about the wonders of this camera, and if you insist that everything about it is perfect, then now's a good time to stop the video. But the complaints that I have really have nothing to do with the camera. The complaints that I have, well, a couple of them do, but the complaints that I have to do with the fact that when you buy a new camera, there's a whole laundry list of other things that you don't, let me rephrase that, other things that I didn't think of when I bought the camera. And as I tend not to actually read the manual, Nikon manuals are famous for being rather impenetrable. Lots of questions have come up that needed to be solved. So allow me to walk you through just a few of them. First and foremost, those are very nice 77mm filters. That is 82 millimeters. So now I gotta go buy a whole bunch of new filters. I know. It's the lens, it's not really the body, but still though, that was a surprise. This is my tether cable. These are very expensive, and I buy them because I'm stupid, but also because they work properly. And I have enough experience with marginal cables to know that it's just painful, but you have to buy the expensive ones. And thank goodness they're not as expensive as the Hasselblad cables, which 20 years ago were $200 each. So anyway, there's the ends, USB-C, USB 3, that fits perfectly into a D500, but is totally useless for the Z8. I gotta buy two new cables as well, so it's a couple $100 there. The other heart stopper with this camera is that I shot a few photos on a job, because of course, why wouldn't you just shoot a job? I actually had it backed up on a DSLR because it was the first time I had ever used this camera, and I took the card and put it into my laptop and fired up Capture One, and there was nothing there. Capture One, as it turns out, will only support, it's an older version. I know you know where I'm going with this. It was an older version of Capture One. It didn't support it. It didn't even say, hey, these files are not supported. It didn't say, you've got some files on your card and I think you might want to upgrade. The card was blank, and it was really funny because I thought, well, in retrospect, it was really funny because I was thinking to myself that I had set the camera to shoot without a card and left the cards out, or I was shooting to, I don't know, shooting to the clouds somewhere. And anyway, I was a bit horrified that I actually hadn't shot anything. And of course the files were all there. It was just the Capture One wouldn't see them, so I had to upgrade. And then there's some other niggling things about the camera, one of which is the shutter sound it reminds me of the Fujifilm GW690 or the Bronica RF645, both famous, great cameras, but famous for having really, really awful shutter sounds. And I actually turned the volume up on that shutter sound because the way it was set when I got the camera, I was actually worried that I had it on silent mode or that I had it on electronic shutter or both. And I didn't want to have weird rolling shutter or weird issues with fluorescence. And but really, it's incredibly underwhelming. That shutter sound, I mean, compared to, whoops, where are we here? Come on, turn it on, there we go. I mean, that's, that says something. And I understand the Z9, you can have different shutter sounds, but currently on the Z8, I can't find them. And then the other thing about the Z8 is like what happens with every new camera is you pick it up and you think, oh, great, I need to figure out how to get the image to review, or I need to get the copyright information in place, and all kinds of stuff like that. And so there is, even though it is a very similar camera, similar menu setup, similar button placement, similar feel, similar colors, similar all kinds of stuff like that, it's still a new camera. And I've had to learn about previewing my exposure in the EVF, how to turn that on, how to turn that off, where to find the button that does this or the button that does that. And unfortunately, the reality has actually occurred to me that maybe I do need to sit down with the manual, which I believe is only available online, and set all of these function buttons to their custom settings and to make it mine. And once I do that, then it will be fine. It'll be just like this, or just like the 810, or just like my Fuji's, or just like any other camera that I use regularly and that I'm used to. So my only advice to you is when you buy a new camera, you really need to spend a fair amount of time trying to figure out what else you're going to have to buy and where else you're going to have to go with this, because I shudder to think about showing up on set, or even just going out for a walk, and you don't get very far at all because something simple, like not so much your tether cable, but you know, the old batteries will work, I think, but not very well. Tripod plate, have to get a new one of those, all kinds of stuff like that. So it's just you know, anyway, it is every time I buy a new camera, I go through this, and every time I get frustrated, and every time I think to myself, the next time I buy a camera, I'll remember this moment and I'll not get too frosted about the whole situation. Yet lo and behold, here we are. So it's not, I mean, the camera itself is really great. It's just taking longer than I expected to get used to. I was kind of hoping it would be seamless, and yet it's not. So for what that's worth, so far so good. And yes, I'm filling up hard drives very quickly with all the files because it's big photos. So there you are.